Welcome, everyone. I'm Madeline DiNono, CEO of the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media. And with me is our fabulous ASL interpreter, Gabe Gomez. And if you want to see Gabe throughout this event, please put your Zoom on gallery view. And so with my checkerboard here, I am going to introduce our illustrious cast and crew from Judas and the Messiah, beginning with Dominique Fishback, who plays Deborah Johnson. Yay! Also Dominique Thorne, who plays Judy Harmon. Yay! Charlese Antoinette Jones, who is the illustrious costume designer. And without further ado, Tiara Thomas, singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
So first of all, Brooklyn in the house. I'm from Brooklyn. So yay, good to see some Brooklyn in the house. So that's great. So I have to say, I am congratulations on the Golden Globe, noms, Daniel Kaluuya winning the award. And I'm sure come March 15th, there's going to be a lot of woot woots when the Oscar noms come out. So last night, were you all like watching together? Were you like texting each other? Like what was happening last night?
I wish we were all together, but COVID got us all over the country in different places. But we're connected like that since the film, right?
Yeah. I missed it because my cable was being weird. So I was texting with people and they were sending me screenshots and videos, so I didn't miss it. But I wish we were together. Yes.
I was watching with a couple friends. My mom and dad they live in another state, so they couldn't make it. But I wanted my family to be there, but it's just me and a couple friends, and we got cute and drank champagne.
Nice.
I tuned in on my own little bubble over here, and it was really nice to see those faces up there. Nice to see them, getting a little shine.
You certainly deserve it. And so Dominique Fishback, I'm going to start with you first to kind of level set. As it says, with great power comes great responsibility. And speaking about Mama Akua, you said she gave you space to develop the character. So were there any authentic truths that she shared with you that informed kind of your North Star on how you developed a character?
Sure. So Daniel and I, along with Shaka King, our director, co-writer, and some of the other producers, flew to Chicago to meet the family to see if they would get on board. And so we sat around a table for over 7 hours, and Chairman Fred Jr. asked us why we all wanted to do this film. That was a big deal. And then something that Mama Akua said was that the Panthers were very disciplined. They didn't speak out of turn. And it was some things in the script that my character said that she just wouldn't have said to Chairman Fred. And I thought that they were like really gentle lines. They didn't feel like so invasive or disrespectful. But instead of kind of casting that aside, I said, okay, well, what is it in this line that is giving Mama Akua pause, and how can I then interpret it differently? And I realized that, Mama Akua, she says whatever's on her mind, she's just like, she's firecracker. So I was wondering how she's saying she wouldn't say these things. And then I thought, oh, Chairman Fred, he allowed people to trust in him. And when you have that kind of trust in people, you don't have to be defensive. You're allowed to be soft. So in that way, because my cast was like that, and Daniel kind of supported that too, just by being himself, I felt safe. And so therefore I was allowed to play the character in a more authentic and soft way that I think helped celebrate what Mama Akua was talking about. And then the other thing was she did not cry during the raid when they killed Chairman Fred, and that was really important that we honored that.
And clearly with the second AD or your cinematographer, that shot, it was very distinctive because it was a close-up. It wasn't, pulled back. So I knew I got that cue, and that would have been a question for me, did that really happen or did that not happen? And then, I'm going to jump over to Charlese. So when you think about kind of grounding grounding this movie in, reality, how difficult was it for you to kind of recreate? Were there source materials available to you? Were there not? How much leeway did you have to create? Because you weren't, it's like you're creating the universe of how all these characters are going to, live up to either the real or fictional, characters that they are. So what went into all that?
A lot of research, and when I first started researching this movie and read the script, I was a little concerned and thought I would have a lot less to work with than I did. Once you start diving into, Chairman Fred's life and this story, you'll be surprised how much you can readily access. I mean, free documentaries, free, footage, of Chairman Fred and some French documentarians that were following him around during that time. We're also very lucky because this was a time where people were being heavily photographed. So there's a lot of images of that journalists took of Chairman Fred and the Rainbow Coalition that are on Getty Images even. So I actually have a lot to work with. And then Shaka had compiled a lot of images himself of Chicago, specifically during the late 60s and early 70s. So I had a lot of imagery to work with and a lot of source material to work with. And then outside of that, I also looked at publications like Ebony Magazine, Life Magazine. There's a specific issue of Life Magazine from 1968 about the Democratic National Convention riots and stuff like that. And it's about Chicago police specifically. So I have imagery of Chicago police like beating people up, like from that time. So I had a lot of source material to work with. And so I was really blessed and lucky. And so that was like my roadmap, like I built my mood boards off of all this source material, took screen grabs from documentaries and put them on my mood boards. And then from there, it was about breaking down exactly what people were wearing in these crowds and these protest scenes, the real people that are in the film, that these characters are based on, like deciding what their look is and building it from there and building out a closet and interchanging those pieces so it feels real and it doesn't feel like every time you see them, they're in something brand new. So definitely look to the source material as my roadmap and just like really dove in and built from there.
Were there any, former Panthers that said like, here, take my beret? Or, I mean, was anything like that anyone came forward and say, hey, you can use this, or anything like that?
Actually, yeah, actually, Chacha Jimenez, who was the leader of the Young Lords, came to set, and he actually handed me pins to put on the actor that were from the Young Lords organization. So I was able to put the actual, and we were having a hard time clearing the pins, and we had recreated them. And it was so perfect because it was a day we were filming the big People's Church scene. So I was able to put, the pins on our actor, on Nick. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And I was so grateful. And then also it messes you up because you're like, this is recent history. This man's still alive. You know what I mean? And he's here. And I'm talking to him and he's telling me I got it right. And we all got everything right. And he feels how real this moment is, and how we recreated it. And so that was just a blessing.
And that had to be so poignant and dramatic for him to kind of, relive it. So Dominique Thorne, I'm going to jump over to you. So can you tell us how your character came about? Was Judy real or fictional?
Judy is one of the few fictional characters in the story, and she's actually a composite of several women and their experiences in the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. I think Shaka, fairly early on, he expressed that it was important to do as much as they could with the characters that were in the script to represent the women. And that's sort of where Judy and her narrative came along. There wasn't any one specific person that I was able to look to, which at first was a bit intimidating because it's like, you want to do, or I wanted to do as best I could to honor these women, but it also provided, I think, a little bit of freedom to learn and to flow with the stories that I was hearing. And it's so funny because now that the movie has been out for some time, I actually maybe about a week ago, I got a call from Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., and he said that he had someone on the line that he wanted me to meet. And he connects the call, and it's this woman who was also a member of the party. And this is the person that he says, him and his family and his friends, when they watch the movie, this is who they think of, this is who they see. And since then, I've had like several messages sent to me where people are like, you remind me of my aunt and da-da-da. So it's been really like fulfilling to hear that even though she is, you know, fictional, that she is so real to so many people, that they see their family or their friend or their mother or their aunt in her. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
So for members of our audience who may not be that familiar, how important were women to the Black Panthers overall, and how important were women to the Chicago chapter of the Panthers, based on how your character developed and just based on what you've learned?
Women were as essential to the party as the men. I think that one of the things that I admire most about the Black Panther Party is the fact that they made it a point to respect the genders present, but it was also not a barrier or a restriction to your involvement, or to what form that took. Clearly, Judy Harmon, she's on the security cadre. Like, there is no gender bias here. There's a desire to respect the women as your sister, as your comrade in arms, not just your comrade, as they say in the movie. And at the Chicago chapter specifically, women made up nearly 51%, I believe, of the chapter. So they were prominent and present in the chapter and at that time also. So yeah, the women were there and active.
And, you know, speaking of powerful women and imagery and movement, Tiara, I want to jump to you. Congratulations on your Golden Globe nom. I know it will be the first of many that you receive. And, you know, you're an artist, and, you know, have been, you know, deeply steeped in music as an artist. Can you talk a little bit about the process? At what point were you brought in to the film? Did you write after seeing footage before? And I know it was a collaboration when it came to the song. Like, can you walk us through that, like how you got to it, and then what was the madness behind your genius?
Well, with this particular song, it's actually funny because I was working with her, the singer her. She's an incredible artist. She's like my little sister.
We love her.
Yeah, she's so dope. That's like my little sister. And, you know, I've been writing songs with her since she was like 15, you know. So we were already working on her album and in LA, and she hit me up and she's like, hey, I'm doing this song for this movie, Judas and the Black Messiah. And I'm like, oh, what's it about? So she's like, tell me what it's about. And I'm like, oh, that sounds crazy. So anyway, she hits me up, and like we were working on her album the day before. So she hits me up. She's like, hey, you coming to the studio today? And I go through to the studio, and we actually watched the movie in the studio. I think it was I don't know if it was a finished cut of, I think there were like a few little things that they had to tweak. But we did have specific directions on, you know, they were very vocal about, they did not want it to be a sad song, you know, anything to make you feel sad, or, you know, they wanted it to be something that was empowering. So we watched the movie in the studio, and I just thought it was crazy because, I mean, I didn't really know very much about the story. So I thought it was crazy. And yeah, so we just sat in the studio for a few hours afterwards, and just kind of, the way we write, we just kind of, well, she was playing a few chords on the guitar. And then we've got the producer that we work with, D-Mile, he's amazing. He kind of just started playing this, you know, funky bass line. And we just started writing, coming up with different concepts of what the movie made us feel like, as far as like, what we could say that was empowering at the end. So like, fight for you, you know, that type of thing. So yeah, we just kind of went back and forth line for line and just came up with this crazy song. And after it was finished, we were like, this is pretty crazy. Yeah.
Did you do it in one day?
Yeah, we did it in one day. It was probably like, I don't know, a few hours. I mean, it's like very unique experience working with her, you know, just because I think it's very organic, you know, and we can write literally any type of song together. So after we got done with the movie, we kind of talked about, okay, what kind of phrases, you know, do we want to say? We wrote it down in our phones, and yeah, we cranked it out in maybe 4 or 5 hours. So it was fun. It was definitely fun.
Page. And, in reading, the lyrics, because I printed them out and I really wanted to look at it, it's an anthem, but it's also very poetic. So, Dominique Fishback, I'm going to go back to you because, poetry is important to you. And from my understanding, you wrote a poem that you read aloud in the film. Can you just talk about all of that?
Sure. Thank you. When I first met with Shaka in a cafe, he said, I wrote the role for you. So just read the script and let me know your thoughts. And I was like, okay. And then I read the script and I sent him an email of like all of the things that I love. And I said, I have 2 thoughts, but I don't want to overstep. So let me know if you want to hear them. And he says, oh, you'll be playing her. You can't overstep. Give me your notes. And he called them notes. And I was like, okay. And one of the things was, one of the first things she says to Chairman Fred in the movie is, do you like poetry? But then we don't hear a poem. But that's because Mama Okua actually stopped writing poetry. So she said she brought her book up to like Chairman Fred in real life and asked him, if he liked poetry. And he said something that she said she hid her poetry book behind her back and like never did poetry again. But for me, I thought it was really important, as actors, we don't have any control over how many scenes we have or like the edit, but how can I give her urgency or a voice even when we don't hear it, something that belongs to her, even if we don't get to hear all of the things that she writes in this journal. And so he said, do you want to take a shot at that poem? And I was like, oh, okay. And then I didn't write the poem for a while. Then one day I get an email saying, oh, how's that poem coming? And I was like, yeesh. So I like sat and put my head down to the phone and just started writing from like my own experience. What would it be like to bring a child into a world? What is one of the most radical things a person could do? A mother could give their child to the world and essentially all of the people that they love and not know if they're going to survive. So that was really poetry really led the whole thing for me. I wrote poems about their first kiss, the first time they see each other. Yeah.
Do you think you'll publish any of that? Will any of that be?
I would love to. And today I got to speak with Mama Okua and Mrs. Frederica Newton, who was Huey P. Newton's widow. And she said she was really happy that poetry was in the movie because a lot of the women were poets. And it was one of them who really got a chance to express themselves. You think of radicals or revolutionaries and you don't necessarily think of poetry, but they really allow space for the poets to express themselves in that way. So she was really happy about the poetry and the love.
So I'm calling it here. There's going to be a book coming out next year that it's, the poetry of the women of the Black Panther movement. I think there's a book that's going to happen. And I think it would be great to not only hear your infusion on it, but also if there are women who were poets that were writing poetry while they're part of the movement, I think that would be awesome. And I would be the first person to pre-order it. So I'm just
maybe we could do like a cast thing too. Like I don't know if Charlese writes, but I know Dominique Thorne writes. We could all just kind of like a little something like the women of the movie, like we intro it and then the women of the movement.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Everybody pay attention. Next year, you're like, I heard it on that interview. Well, we'll be behind you 100%. So if it's something you want to do, let's all talk about that. So Dominique Thorne, I'm going to go back to you. So obviously we do research. We look at quality, quantity. One of the things that we've always paid a lot of attention to is screen and speaking time. And so one of the things that jumped out at me, because it's something that Gina and I always talk about, is one thing to say, okay, there's 4 great female characters, but are you being seen and heard with the same weight as your other top of the call sheet co-lead male actor, right? And so with you, it just jumped out at me. It seemed to me that was very intentional on the part of Shaka or whoever your second AD was, that every scene you were in, you were seen and you were heard. And like in the car, it was always you closest to the camera, not in behind. You know, there were just dramatic things that jumped out at me. How intentional was that in terms of placing you, your placement in the scene, in addition to, you know, the dialogue? It was just something that it really jumped out at me.
That's such a wonderful question. I think, as Dominique said, you know, we really don't have much control, or dare I say influence over the scenes, you know, that we are actually captured in, even if we are in the room. And I can say that pretty early on, I had kind of, you're correct, you know, there absolutely is like an ordering on the call sheet. But I think that from the moment that I accepted this role, I sort of let all of that go. Like I just sort of threw it out the window. And my main focus was, how do I make her a full and complete person? Because I knew that her scenes were sort of far and few between. It wasn't until we actually began filming that I started to see a little bit more that she really is Fred's right hand. You know, quite literally, almost always to the right of him, but also. You know, she's on the security team and she's there to protect, so you are going to see her. But I remember the scene that I auditioned with didn't even make it into like the second version of the script. So something that I had expressed to Shaka was that I want to, amidst all the change that will inevitably come, and also in an effort to respect, again, this portrayal of the women, I want to make sure that she is not used or seen as a prop. That was my only concern, like the only sort of real ask that, I guess, if that's the word I'm going to use, that I really had, because I just wanted to make sure that I was doing the best that I could to give her that fullness, you know, that she deserved. I think it wasn't as clear to me in the moment when we were filming the scenes, like, okay, like the camera's on me or you can see me, you know. I can't say that I really felt that, but I can say that there was a clear decision being made to have Harmon present with the chairman, you know, in step, in line with him. If he's entering into a tense situation, she's there. And it was actually a bit of a conversation about what would have been seen as appropriate, because I remember even Chairman Fred Jr. saying that there are just some things and some moments where the chairman may never have put a woman in that situation, you know, but it's also putting that up against the fact that this is a woman on the security team. And so what does that mean to her role, not just as a woman, but as her role as a member of this party? And so I'm very grateful and glad that Shaka was as conscientious about this as you were able to discern from watching it, because I think that it does a lot to the fullness that we feel from Judy.
And for me, I thought, oh, you know what? How important were women to the Panther movement? I mean, after I finished watching the movie, like that's all I started researching, because I'm like, I felt it was a signal to me as an audience member. And I thought, oh, I need to know more about this, because it just really, you know, jumped out at me. So Charlese, I want to go back to you, because color palette. Okay, so there was a distinctive color palette to the movie, and then you had to make decisions about color palettes. I'm wearing my mom's 1970s leather jacket for y'all, because I'm like,
I love it.
I'm gonna wear it. So, you know,
I love it.
So how did you think about color palette? There was, and I'm trying to wear my earth tones. It seemed like there was like an earthy kind of tone, but then
Yes.
you had palette for the Young Lords. You had a palette, you know, for the Patriots. So how do you do that in the context of paying attention to the color palette of the film? right?
Yeah, I love color, obviously, and I have a distinct way of putting colors together that have really that is just innate and natural to me, that has really helped and informed the way I design. Most of my work is very vibrant. So with this, I basically set up rules. So in our movie, we don't lean towards like some of the pastels or even some of the more like neons and like soft neons and brights that you might encounter in the 60s, right? I made the decision early on that like those are suburban colors and we are in south side of Chicago. So, you're not going to see those colors because you would associate those with like stay-at-home moms, psychedelic prints, people that aren't really fully in our world, right? So, with that, the color palette of the movie is a lot of earth tones, our neutrals and our black, black, white, cream, gray bases, right? And then jade kind of like, jewel tones. So like jade greens, sapphire blues, like things like that, like jewel tones. So any of the pop colors are in more the jewel tone family. So when it came down to the specific gangs and organizations, the color palettes are based off of a color palette that was either the actual organization's color palette or drawn from some sort of from symbolism. So for example, for the Young Patriots, you're going to have more of the Americana feel and also pulling from the American flag and the Confederate flag. So that red, white, and blue. So you see more of that. And also Americana meaning like denim, cowboy boots, right? Like things like that, cowboy hats, elements that no one else is wearing in the film on top of color. And then like for the young lords, their colors were purple and gold. So you only see people wearing those colors if they're part of that organization, but still within this whole world, right, that we have of these earth tones and these jewel tones. But I kind of like pulled out certain pop colors for certain organizations. With the crowns, you'll see a lot more of like that true green, in their berets and in some of the pieces that they're wearing. With our Panthers, it's always warm. It's always warm. It's always earth tones. It's warm. It's warm. It's warm. And then within that, certain people have particular color palettes. Like so, for Deborah early on, she's a little bit brighter. She's a little bit more airy. She's got on like creams and things like that, right? And then later on in the film, as she gets more entrenched in the party, like her color palette darkens a bit and she's wearing more black and leather and darker jewel tones, right? And then for LaKeith's character as O'Neill, he starts out as like a street kid and as a punk, and then you see like as he starts to get money, this green comes in and these touches of green come in his wardrobe: jade green, money green, capitalism, greed, right? So it was really fun for me to play around with these colors and create this overall world that had these rules and then have pops, with certain characters or certain groups within this world.
So what's going to happen to all these fabulous costumes?
They're at storage at Warner Brothers.
That jacket the jacket that Deborah has when she sees Chairman outside of jail, I would always be like, girl, can I get that jacket? I love hearing you talk about the specifics of what you have done. It is so inspiring.
True artist.
It is, and I think Warner's got to like clear out Batman or something and just put a whole and the Messiah in the VIP tour. I don't know if you've ever been there. They do a fabulous tour, but I think you need a section there. It'd be great for people to really see those costumes. So, Tiara, I want to go back to you because we talked about structure, composition, the mechanics of the song, and you started to say, and I'd love for you to embellish on that we didn't want this to be mopey and sad, and what is the takeaway, the feeling that you want a youth who maybe didn't know the story, or people who did know the story, like what do you want to linger in terms of the story coming out of the song? What do you want us to be left with?
Well, I think it would be like a sense of hope, a sense of empowerment, and that's what I meant when I said we didn't want it to be anything that was sad, or feel like, oh, we're doomed, or we wanted it to be something, because this is a fight. The song's called Fight for You, and it's a fight that was happening then and that's still happening now. You know what I'm saying? And so we wanted it to be something that felt inspiring and empowering and hopeful, you know, something that makes you want to dance, like, you know, get up and dance to. When I first heard it, I was like, this reminds me of like if like Black Charlie's Angels was coming on in the 70s. That's what this song would remind me of. So yeah, that's kind of the direction we wanted to go to. We wanted to keep it light, but still something, you know, one thing, I feel like it's easier to make a song that is slow, that's meaningful, but we wanted it to be something that was upbeat, that was also meaningful, you know, lyrics that would still hit, you know, like you were saying earlier, like poetry, you know, we wanted it to be something like that. So I feel like we did a really good job executing. They did send us back notes, one note on the song. It was, actually, I can't remember the note, but it was one word. It was one word. And they had us change that, and everything else they loved. So we were really happy about that.
Well, I'm sure this song will go on, and we'll be hearing it, forever. So I know I see a burst of questions, and I would love for some of our audience to be able to ask some questions. Lisa, do you want to come on and pull some questions for our panelists to answer?
Hi, it's Jasmine. I'll ask a few questions.
Jasmine, are you going to pull some questions for our...
Yes, I think we only have time for one closing question. So I know everybody has a hard out and other commitments, but I mean, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I think a good question for the whole group is, if you could think of one thing you'd like the audience to take away from watching this film, what would that be? Anyone?
Love is at the root of all activism.
I think for I didn't learn about the Black Panther Party growing up in schools, and I'm hoping that the youth will be able to know that we've had heroes for so long that really look like us. That, I mean, Chairman was 21 when he was assassinated, and Mama Cool was 19. There were young people doing this, and so I hope that young people will recognize themselves, or at least see a little bit of themselves and say, oh, maybe I can do this too. Maybe I can stand for something too.
Absolutely. I think I'll add on that, and I'd say that there's no age restriction to involvement, that your opinions, your feelings, your beliefs, they matter, and they're justified simply because you are, you exist, and you too are. Your experience is justified. So that was your opinion.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying I definitely agree. I mean, something that it personally made me do was go, after seeing the movie, is educate myself on the, I already knew about the Black Panther Party, but, just the story of Fred Hampton. Someone was saying that there's countless information out there about him, free documentaries on YouTube. And that's actually where I went YouTube, because I was like, this story's crazy and it's real. So, yeah, I hope that it makes other people go and, educate themselves further on the heroes that we've had in the past.
Charlese?
Oh, well, I started saying love is at the root of all activism, and also just how much we could do, like all the small things you do, how they add up to a really big, great thing when you're working in the community and you're organizing. Because I think, I know for me, capitalism had me twisted, thinking I had to like get to a certain place or level in life to enact change and make change. And then learning about the party and what they were doing and how they were feeding children and doing all this stuff. And they didn't necessarily have money to be doing any of the things that they were doing, but they were enacting and making lasting change. And the breakfast program is a program that, this country has adopted as part of public schools, right? And so like, just to see how things have spread and grown off of these small things that they were doing with like little bits of money during that time.
Mama Akua said that they used to find whatever little things in the community to help. So even if it was helping, walking with older people to the bank to make sure they didn't get robbed, it was things like that. Going to helping them with the groceries. Anything around the community that needed help, big or small, they were there to provide it.
Well, I mean, we could talk to you, you know, for many more hours. So call to action, people who are watching. We know you've all seen the movie, but can you commit to getting 5 to 20 more people to see the movie? So we'd love for you to do that. Play the crap out of the song. We want you to listen to the song like 24/7. And for our friends at Warner Brothers, clear out some room and costumes to be as part of the VIP tour. And wish you all well going into Oscar noms and SAG and SAG-AFTRA and everything else. And thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Having me.
Yes.
Nice to meet y'all.
Yes.
You guys are amazing, by the way. Amazing.
Thank you.